kick off on time. We have quite a lot to get through. So as we start, I'd like to welcome our Premier, as well as the Department of the Premier, Dr. Malila and your staff, and also the committee. And then a special welcome to, I believe it's Meals on Wheels from Oudtshoorn, who are on a tour of the Cape Town this week. Funny, some of us were in Oudtshoorn last week, so welcome. And I think we can pretty much kick off. So I'm going to ask for introductions, but before I start, this is mainly an online, a live meeting. However, we do have some members online. I know Member Walters is online. Just to remind everybody that everyone who is online will be muted at the beginning of the meeting, just to avoid background noise. If there are points of order, please point them out in the chat function if you're online. Obviously, videos and audio must be switched off, and if somebody is speaking, then they obviously would turn off and be asked to mute their mics again once they have finished. However, most of us are here in the chamber, and I think to commence, let's just do a round of introductions so that we do have an idea of who we have here. I am Benedicte van Minnen. I am the chair of the Standing Committee. I will first ask the committee to introduce themselves so that everyone knows who they are, and then we can have the department. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, Premier, all honourable members and officials. My name is Wendy Kaiser-Philander, and I'm a member of this committee.
Good morning, Chair. I am Leon van Wyk, a member of this committee. Good morning to the Premier. Good morning to the HOD. Good morning to all the other honourable members and to the officials.
Good morning, Chair. I'm a member of this committee. Good morning, Premier, HOD, and all other members. Good morning.
Good morning, Premier, Chair, everyone. Dave Bryant, member of the committee.
Hi, good morning, Chairperson. My name is Khalid Sayed, member of the committee, and my greetings to the Premier and his team as well. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Gillian Bosman.
Right, so we could just have the department then, I think. Thank you, Premier.
Thank you.
Thomas Walter is a member of the committee.
Sorry, Thomas, you were sitting so quietly, I kind of forgot you were there.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. Thank you very much. Alan Wundy, Premier in the province. I'll hand over to the DG.
Chair, good morning, and also good morning to all the members. Harry Malila, I'm the DG in the province, as well as the accounting officer for Vote 1.
Good morning, Chair and members. I'm Driekus Basson. I'm the CFO of the department. Thank you.
Morning, Chairperson and members. Henriette Robson, Head of Corporate Assurance.
Good morning, Lucas Buter. I'm the Head of Legal Services.
Good morning, Zinat Ishmael, Program Manager for Program 2. Thank you.
Good morning, Ihsan Samai, Center for E-Innovation.
Good morning, Letitia Isaacs, Organisation Development.
Morning, Louise Estreiser, People Management.
Good morning, Ritvan van Rensburg, Provincial Forensic Services.
Good morning, Evan Alexander, Center for E-Innovation.
Morning, Augie de Vreites, Center for Innovation.
Good morning, Johan Nel, Provincial Training and Empowerment.
Morning, Anneke Bredenan, People Empowerment.
Good morning, Alvi Lister, Special Advisor to the Premier.
Morning, everybody. Nico Boshoff, Legal Services.
Good morning, Chair and members. Blanche Cancross, Internal Audit.
Good morning, Almo Geldenhuis, Director, Departmental Strategy.
Good morning, Nozipoma Olwana, Office of the DG.
Morning, Robert Shaw, Office of the DG. Thank you, everybody. And I think that we can kick off. So today we are dealing with the deliberation on the 23-24 annual report on the Department of the Premier. I will take it that everybody has read and digested the documentation that has been circulated. And Honourable Premier, if I could hand over to you for some introductory remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and once again, honourable members. I think, first of all, what I'd like to say right up front is once again to the team, congratulations on the report itself. As you will notice that it's not outsourced photographs, etc. It's actually real photographs of the team. And the ability to do this kind of stuff in-house is really critical that we get that right. I also want to say that the report deals with the last part of the last term of the last part of the sixth administration, and then a short part into the seventh administration. I think for me, that last part of the term is really characterized by a few things. I think, first of all, it was the worst load shedding that our country had ever experienced and our province had ever experienced. And in the previous year, that's when this province said, well, we really need to have a look at what else we can do to try to get a change in energy provision, and specifically look at the role that local authorities can play, but that the province can play as well. And Alvi Lester is here, who leads that energy program to get more and more energy into the system. That plan was devised. That's 5,700 megawatts for the province. I think it was also characterized by more and more disasters, floods and fires, and yeah, we definitely are the recipient of the global warming that's happening around the planet, but we can feel it definitely here in this province. It affects us almost every single month. There's something that is affecting us in the region. I think the other side of that, that year that stands out for me is the severe budget cuts that we had to go through. These are primarily driven by the above inflation rate wage agreements that then we don't get it covered by National Treasury. And so, of course, our two big departments, they have to cover the percentage shortfall that we don't get. And then, of course, every one of our other departments have to absorb those costs. And the higher those costs go, we have to cut away from service delivery. So a big issue for us. I think inflation as well, knocking us. As you see every single year, the rand-dollar exchange rate also knocks us as a region. And so we have to continually spend more and more time looking at financial stability and sustainability in the province. I've mentioned climate change. We also have started now adding water to that, because just as we've gone through a season with more rain than we've had in a long time, and like, for example, in the city of Cape Town, at one stage recording more water coming in 1 month than we've ever recorded before, it can swap around just as quickly, and we could get back into drought scenarios once again that we have felt. So yeah, it was a tough year, but also a year that this department steps up when it needs to step up, and I do want to thank the DG and the team for that. Then from internally with the government, the programs that we've put in place, from our culture journey, which is about how do we as public servants deliver our services in this government. And governments don't normally do this. I can't find many other governments that do it. But really getting into the culture journey, because it talks about the way that your services are delivered by your personnel. So although this is a start to something that many businesses around the world have been doing for years and years, it's how your brand is enhanced and how your services actually improve to your citizens. So I do really want to mention that and thank the team for the focus and the work that's been done in that area. And then, of course, it's about what this department does. It's from the center, it's the strategic management, it's the citizen-centric approach, it's ICT and e-innovation, legal services and legal support across the organization, HR across the organization, except for the two big departments. It's, the corporate assurance and understanding the risk. So, yeah, it's at the center. And I think lastly, while we've got this difficult environment of climate change on the one side and many, many disasters that don't get funded, to a very fast growing population, the fastest growing population in South Africa. And that in itself also puts a lot of pressure on this department and on this government. But I think that's probably in a nutshell, if I have to kick off in this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Malila, have you got some introductory comments you would like to make? Thank you.
Chair, thank you very much. And again, good morning to the members. Obviously, my report as accounting officer stepped out in our annual report from pages 17 to 23. But I want to also connect to what the Premier said. I mean, over the last year, there's been many challenges, but I think, I'm leading a very capable department. I mean, our overall mission is to build a government that people trust, and wherever we go, we start with that. And the Department of the Premier plays a transversal role. We're not only responsible as a vote, but we look over the entire government, and our role is to enable and to lead a capable Western Cape government. So we take key responsibility for obviously oversight and delivery on our key priorities, which is job safety and well-being, and obviously supported by the transversal priority around innovation, culture, and governance, which the department plays a key role in it. We're also obviously responsible for all the issues relating to making sure that we've got effective cabinet services, together with obviously, taking full accountability for all the issues. Our role is also to pull all our strategic priorities together. I mean, Premier spoke about the issues around the floods and the fires. And obviously also, I think we're almost at the end of recovery from COVID, although the economy hasn't really recovered, and therefore the jobs for growth strategy, which was adopted last year, will actually lay the basis over the next 8-9 years, to make sure that we reach our target of 1 trillion economy, as well as growing, the economy between 4% and 6%, and ultimately reaching our target of 600,000 jobs. That means, Chair, that there's a big reliance on what we do sort of internally and the enabling role that the government plays to make sure that the economy delivers. I mean, Premier spoke about our different programs. Obviously, each program has its own responsibility. I mean, we'll probably talk about it in a little bit more detail when we get to that. But I mean, Program 4 ultimately makes sure that, that we deal with all the issues as it relates to ICT and CEI. I mean, we're the custodian of the CEI environment in this government. I always make the example, we build the roads and determine the norms and standards, for that to take place. Our financial, corporate and legal governance and services sits within Program 5 and 6, and Program 2 in essence deals with a lot of the corporate governance issues as it relates to data, strategic management, and all those things. Obviously, Program 5 also includes issues around internal audit and deal with some of the other matters. Chair, I don't know, you're probably going to allow for another round of questions, but I mean, we've got no issues on our receipts. On the expenditure side, just to give you an indication that we've got a budget of just over 2 billion, 2 billion and 30 million, or 2.03 million. We've spent just over 2 billion of that. It's a small underspending of about 1.2% of our overall budget. The funding that we've underspent on primarily relates to GNS and a little bit obviously also on staff costs, but we've asked for rollovers of all the respective amounts. And then on page 18, obviously, all the environments and rollovers, which we can actually deal with. And, under the irregular fruitless wasteful expenditure, I'm sure we'll deal with that quite extensively, when we deal with the scope session. Premier also spoke about the difference we want to make in people's lives. ultimately that is our overall goal. So we enable departments and we lead in departments, but the ultimate objective is to make a difference in the lives of people. Then the last part on page 21 and 22 just deals, with some of the institutions around gifts, donations, etc. And then the last part, page 22, 23, is just my assurance certificate as the AO in terms of the information that we've supplied and also the disclosure that we've made in the annual report. But in closing, Chair, I think we've tried fairly hard as a department. There's been some challenges, particularly as it relates to the budgets and the budget cuts, which Premier spoke to. That obviously resulted in us not being able to fill some of our key positions. But I mean, I must also say that in the department, and you also see in our org structure, that every single member actually stepped up and delivered on the services, which I'm really proud of and also very grateful for. And then the other challenges that we had, as a team, we sort of assess it, look at it, and try and get through the details. So, Chair, that's some opening comments on my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Greatly appreciated. So we're going to do a round of questions based on the input from the Premier and the DG. Then we will proceed to the deliberation of the actual annual report. So in this round, it is questions to the Premier and the DG. Do we have any hands in this regard? Okay, I've got Member Said. Did I see Bryant? No. And Stevens. And also Kaiser Philander. Okay, and nothing online. All right, let's kick off with Member Said.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you to the Premier and the DG. My first few questions is very broad and of a political nature at the beginning, then we'll get into more of the technical stuff later. I think the Premier, I think the Premier acknowledges at the beginning that the cuts in the budget in the most critical service delivery areas such as health, education, and social development. He says that it's having a far-reaching impact on residents, and then he says it is the most vulnerable in society who are feeling the impact of this most acutely. We want to agree. I mean, this is an issue that we've been raising and members of the public have been raising consistently. Now, the Premier states, and I think that's linked to this is our first question. If we look at paragraph 5 and paragraph 7, the Premier speaks about the dispute declared, intergovernment dispute declared with national government. He also speaks about, in as much as he values cooperative governance and respects the government of national unity, must still be able to have the difficult conversations to ventilate the issues. Now, just wanted to get a sense. I mean, I've got, firstly, how does the province ensure and implement the principle of equitable share within the province when the gap between the racially based rich and poor has created what we call the tale of two cities? This is in the context of the dispute that has been declared. Then number 2, based on that, is also what percentage of the provincial budget targets the poor and the vulnerable, and why has provincial government departments, such as Western Cape Education Department, for example, returned national grant funding? Yeah, we just wanted to get a sense of that within that broad political context and the fact that it's declaring an intergovernmental dispute. Can I ask more questions now? Could I come in a bit later? I just wanted to.
Do you want the member to finish or?
Okay. Then also, with regards to the report of the accounting officer, page 15, paragraph 9, we have made a concerted effort to be more resident-centric, including listening carefully to residents to understand their particular circumstances and needs. Now, while I want to welcome the first Thursdays that take place. I think it's a very, very good initiative, Premier and DG. Also think, and it's maybe not necessarily linked to the department, but the previous term of the legislature, the 6th term, when the Western Cape legislature had the hearings on the Provincial Powers Bill, we had a situation where residents in the city of Cape Town were not able to engage the legislature in a physical, in-person public hearing. That's just one example. Do you think, as the Department of the Premier and the Premier, that what can the legislature do? What can we do as lawmakers to ensure that government is more resident-centric in terms of listening to the public and ensuring that the views of the public inform our oversight? Then the last paragraph on page 15, the Department of the Premier assisted other departments with comprehensive legal services. I wanted to just get a sense what cases and which departments were these services basically provided to. Did the cases improve the lives of vulnerable people? What's the impact of the resolution of those cases? And what is the overall ballpark figure for the Department of the Premier when it comes to the spending on legal cases? Thank you.
Thank you, Premier.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much to the Honourable Said. First of all, on the intergovernmental dispute, I think just adding to what I said right in the very beginning. So we budget every single year for our wage increases, and when the central negotiations take place, they take place and they negotiate an outcome, and the outcome then forces us to then cover that salary increase. And especially when the salary increase is above the budgeted amount and above inflation. And especially last year, we started, when the wage negotiations started, we started writing every single month, year to the Minister of Finance and raising it in the PCFs, the PCCs, raising it in the expanded cabinets to say that we cannot afford an above inflation rate or above budgeted salary increase, and that if anything is negotiated above what we've got in the budget, it must be covered by the Treasury and by the central finance system. And in the middle of the year, we were then hit with what the agreed outcome was. And for example, in education, we only got 64% of the money. When you only get 64% of the money, the rest of the money has to be found within your current envelope. And the second point, which I think is quite critical, it happens in the middle of the year. Now, we all know that, now we're doing annual reports, so we're looking back on the previous year. This is the report from that year. But we also know that in March, this very Parliament gets to see the budget process that the government was involved in. That starts in November, it goes through to January, February. It's intense budget processes internally, getting our letters of commitment from national. We started the first part for the next year's budget. In actual fact, last week, Wednesday, DG wasn't in this one, it was only a political one. It was the MEC of Finance and myself, and we were at the expanded cabinet last week talking about exactly the same issue. But you go back to this specific year, we then got the increases to the salaries, and in the two big departments, we got a percentage, but the rest have to come from our own budgets. When you take it from your own budgets, there's nowhere else to find money. You have to cut it from your services. And then in the other departments, for example, this department, we have to just absorb it. So you again cut from your services. So that's why we declared the intergovernmental dispute. We also said that it's illegal, because surely a parliamentary process and an approving budget it's a legal process. It's a process that the Parliament goes through, and then the wage negotiations overrides that parliamentary process and says, we don't care what you budgeted for and what your budget looks like. You now have to spend this. And that was our dispute. And we carried that dispute through. We got to a kind of an agreement. We understand that, obviously if we end up in court and force the issue in this province, it's going to be forced across all provinces, and it's going to run into tens of billions of rands. And at the end of the day, we also understand the budget is this size, and you've got to find within that budget cover everything. But we did get agreement that there will be a proper process, not discounting the parliamentary process, and also that it can't just be a representative from this government sitting on some panel that decides what this wage increase is. You have to take into account the cabinet of the province and the other provinces, and of course the national cabinet when these negotiations take place. So, for example, on Wednesday when I went, I actually took a mandate from this cabinet to the extended national cabinet because of the learnings and the pain that we've had to take in the last year. I think with regards to the percentages, we can give you the exact number because, of course, specifically social development, healthcare, education, these are our core constitutional mandates, and that money is not spent on the wealthy. It is spent on the most vulnerable in our province. When it comes to the question around what should the legislature do, I'm a bit hesitant to answer that question because it's, I don't think, a good idea for the executive to be telling the legislature what should be done. But what I can say is that in the government side, I mean, I've personally been doing First Thursdays now for 8 years. It's been entrenched. That was when I was the MEC, it started in my various portfolios. But in this government, we started it 5 years ago. And it's not only the First Thursday. We also do what we call outreaches. So if the cabinet is going to be in another place in the month, we'll also do exactly the same thing. We might do a First Thursday, but then in the third week, we might do a cabinet outreach. And it is about listening to the citizens, which is another layer on all of our other public participation processes, because there are many public participation processes in government. When it comes to the Powers Bill, I think there again, that wasn't a government bill. It was a member's bill of the Parliament. And I mean, I know that there was an altercation downstairs because I remember seeing the gates broken and but I think it's also presumptuous of me to try and pronounce on that because that's a parliamentary process. I don't think I should be commenting on it, although, I mean, for the person that's brought First Thursdays in, and perhaps also even in my own unannounced visits where it is about getting on the ground, sitting in the Home Affairs queue, sitting in the Health Department's queue, talking to citizens about how long have they been waiting, what's their experience like, so we could come back and change programs in government to try and continually improve services. What the DG does is this, it's the same thing. It's about on the ground. It also links to innovation, where our officials are out just observing, because then when you come back, you think about how do we actually improve the service? What are the innovations that we can bring in? And then lastly, on the legal services, I mean, the costs are obviously there on page 17, but jeepers, the number of cases, it's a lot. But I'm going to leave that to Mr. Buter to answer. DG, I don't know if you want to add to any of those questions, and then maybe Mr. Buter wants to answer the last question on legal.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just two matters from my side. Obviously, on the implementation of the equitable share formula in the province, I mean, the equitable share funding we get from national is a source of funding. And as we know, what's it, 90% more or less of the budget comes through that source. And in fact, most of the funding goes towards education, health, and some of our key services. And then obviously the other part comes from conditional grants and a little bit of own revenue. On the percentage that targets the poor, I mean, I can indicate, I mean, if you go back to the budget book of 2024, over the next 3 years, the Western Cape government allocates 182 billion or 70% of the provincial budget just towards the well-being area. And most of the well-being areas relates to education, health and social services. And then the rest of the budget obviously goes towards safety, which also primarily targets the poor almost exclusively. And then the other priority deals with growth and jobs. And ultimately, that's also targeted to creating jobs, growing the economy, and making it easier for people. And then the last part obviously deals with innovation, culture, and governance. And there's a very nice breakdown in the front part of the budget indicating how much goes to health and wellness, how much goes to education, social development, cultural affairs and sports, police oversight, and then obviously some of your other key departments. And then even in our governance and administration departments, a big chunk of the budget, like our budget is 2.6% of the total budget, but almost all the budget or a big chunk of that actually goes towards the poor, you know, through our CAI services. On the education issues, I mean, I can get the information, maybe later respond to member side. I've just asked the PT to give us the information on the underspending in education for last year and why certain funding was returned, or alternatively, we can even, you know, answer it by just a return in terms of, you know, writing to the committee. Lucas can add a little bit more, but I mean, our legal service is transversal, okay? And we're not only dealing with, let's call it, cases, because I mean that's only one component, but there's also other areas, and that's set out on page 92 and actually page 90 of our book. So there are advisory and governance services. That's really just responding to some of the corporate stuff. Then there's a big component that deals with legislation, you know, and that's not necessarily, let's call it, cases and court cases outside. And then sub-program 6.4 deals with the issue of litigation. And I mean, the work that we do there, we work with the Office of the State Attorney. And I mean, the cost of that, I think Premier's indicated that is in our book. But obviously, that's not only in relation to, you know, cases and what we spend. It's to provide a transversal legal services. So if you look at an external legal firm, that's typically, you know, what they would do. So it's an entire suite of service across the entire Western Cape government. Then just lastly, I think from my side, and I mean, it also relates to the question that that was asked to Premier on, around how do we become more citizen centric, or how do we provide more of our services, in addition to First Thursdays, because I mean, the First Thursday platform gets attended by not just myself and the Premier, but I mean, our program managers also attended. So when I attended on a Thursday, there's always a program manager from a particular program that's there, because obviously some of the services cuts transversely, but it's also exposing people to hear the issues of, you know, the citizens that we serve out there. In addition to that, the member side, we also, in each of our APP targets, we've got the component there where we say we need to have service delivery visits. And those service delivery visits actually relates to service sites visits to where Western Cape government provides services, but with the main intention of saying, you know, what's working, what's not working, and then the team comes back and then they sit around and then they actually work out a program to say how can we actually, you know, improve the services at those institutions. So it's also a way of listening. So when Premier and I went to, as an example, Vangate clinic, you know, next to Jake Schervel, we went there, you talk to people that's in the queue, you understand what is happening, you go in the background and you look at what is happening and you come back and you craft a plan, obviously together with the department. And then if you go back 5, 6, 7 months, I mean, in the Red's team also did it in many of the institutions, then you can actually see the improvement. So we always look at a before picture, and then it's an after picture. And on those things, we actually evaluate each other and we actually bring those findings and stuff back into our management meetings. And then Lucas, if you maybe want to add on the legal stuff?
Thank you, Member Said, for that question. Just to add to the Premier and the DG's remarks, I think I should start by saying that there's no shortage of clients for us. We service the Provincial Cabinet, the Premier, the DG, all of the MECs in the individual capacities in all the departments, and in some cases even public entities. And we've also expanded quite a lot into the local sphere of government, especially in our training. And through the Department of Local Government, I think we also render quite a lot of support to municipalities in the regulatory space. From a spending perspective, I should maybe say that we generally do not outsource. We're about 95% salary driven, and obviously the difference or the exception is in litigation, where we have to pay all those advocates who represent ministers and departments in court. So it's about 55 million on the unit, and then on litigation we spent approximately 28 million for the full financial year. And I want to also confirm that I think the value add and the impact on residents, I don't think it's so much in litigation and cases. I think the vast majority of those matters are either not substantial or they're quite technical, and they've seldom, I think, impact directly on the rights and interests of citizens and their well-being. We open about 600 new litigation files per annum. And as I said, not everything is substantial. There's quite a lot of debt collection and motor vehicle crashes and all sorts of things that live in that 600 number. And I think where I would like to believe that we add a lot of value is more in the advisory space. It's on legal opinions, it's on contracts, it's on training and legal governance. And I think that's really where we enable departments to deliver services to the citizens. And maybe just to say that, as a unit, we do our work through a resident-centric lens. We're not lawyers. We are lawyers, but we are first and foremost, we are public servants. So when we do our work, we're always mindful of the end result or the end goal. And I always give the example of, if we have to draft or vet a contract that relates to, let's say, a housing development program. If we delay on our side, then obviously the residents have to wait longer for that development to happen. So yes, I don't know if that is sufficient to answer your question.
Thank you, Premier.
Thank you, Chair. If I can just maybe add one other point to Honourable Said's question around, the returning of money or the underspend. And I mean, as DG says, we can get the detail, but every annual report will report on that. Where you see on ours on page 17, it was 1.22%, mainly the Children's Commissioner's underspending, and then of course some capital goods delivery. But it will be in every annual report. They will report exactly what the amount of money and the percentage.
DG?
Yeah, maybe just on that point, I've got a response from PT. In fact, they said that education did not return any underspending to national. That's in 2023-2024. They only had an underspending of about 34 million. And if you think about education's budget, I think it's in excess of 30 billion rand per year. So they spend 99.9% of their budget. You can't really get closer to that because obviously then you also risk, overspending. But there's no money that's been returned in 23-24. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'm going to move on to Member Stevens and then Member Kaiser-Philander.
Chair, this is also an understanding. Not so long ago, we had the Commissioner of the Children here. I think about 3 weeks ago, where she was complaining and how unhappy she was with going with no staff. They were understaffed. And how many times she applied for, but no staff was allocated to her. On page 17, why was there underspending within the Office of the Western Cape Commission for Children? This office plays a vital function for protecting our children, and we need all the money set aside to be utilized for this important office. From the report, reasons given for underspending is that this office is in its formative stage. I'd like reasonable timeframes be decided on as to when the completion of this office will take effect. When we fail to appropriate all the funds set aside for this office, the children who are the beneficiaries of the service suffers. The report also highlights on page 18 wasteful and fruitless expenditure, but the report is rampant with examples of irregular and fruitless expenditure. Can we please have a look into that? I mean, it's our children. Thank you.
I'm going to hand over now. I just want to remind members that this is really introductory questions on the comments of the Premier and the DG. We are going to go through the sections. So if there are sections specific, may I ask you just hold them over till we get there. But thank you very much. Premier?
Chair, maybe just on the Commissioner for Children. In fact, I met with her on Friday. And I mean, that office, we've been trying to get that office going for the last 3 years or so. We have received dedicated earmarked funding from PT for that office. The biggest challenge that we have at the moment is securing an appropriate facility. So for the first 3 years or so, the Office of the Children Commissioner occupied a building in St. George's Mall. We've really been trying to get an appropriate building. When we identified a building in Cape Town that's also child-friendly, etc., then that building had tenants in it, and then we first had to go through a process, obviously, to make sure that we get the tenants out of it, because we can't just put people out. And then the second issue was really around getting the building to be fitted to be appropriate for children. As a vote, I mean, every year when there was underspending, for the Commissioner for Children, we got the Provincial Treasury to roll over the money, because obviously it's been earmarked. But between Prem and I mean, we had our consistent engagements with the Office of the Children's Commissioner. The biggest challenge, I mean, Louise can come in here, was on the recruitment of staff. Some of the staff members that we were trying to recruit, because remember, the Children Commissioner herself is an appointment by virtue of law, but the staff in the Office of the Children Commissioner are public servants employed by this department, and we obviously go through a process. Louise can indicate there were some of those positions where we had to go out 3 times actually to recruit staff, and sometimes people take up positions and then maybe after a couple of months would actually leave the system. And Chair, it's not for a lack of trying. We can actually give you all the information, and as I said, our door's always been open to the Commissioner for Children. The funding that we've got for her is protected. It is really just an issue of finding appropriate people to serve in the office, because it's also a new environment, so you don't really get people that are specialists in the area of dealing with children, but notwithstanding, we have actually tried. In addition to that, maybe just to indicate to the member what we've also done internally now, I've asked my team that deals with evaluations to actually do a full evaluation for us on the impact of the Children's Commissioner. What have we achieved? What have we not achieved? What has been the challenges? And Chair, I mean, once we get that report, I will gladly share it with the Speaker, because obviously, the Children Commissioner report, but we will go through a proper process. So Chair, it's not for a lack of trying, and I mean, it's just been very difficult, for over the last 3 years. But we are committed, to the work that the Children Commissioner need to do, and we will support her over the next couple of years.
Thank you very much. Member Kaiser-Philander?
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, it was mentioned early on about the unprecedented in-year budget cuts, especially in those critical service delivery areas. So I would just like to understand what those determinants are. And Chairperson, having said that, I don't even want to make any politics out of this, because one can see the effect of these budget cuts. And Premier and DG, I really want to commend you on how you manage to keep this boat above water. And I mean, these cuts, it doesn't ask for where or how you are affiliated. It affects the most vulnerable. And what one wants to see is exactly what we see in the Western Cape, is that you do the best with what you have. But what I'm trying to understand is, how do you determine from which departments gets cuts? And yeah, since that is critical service delivery areas. My second question, Chair, I think it was the DG that spoke about underspending on staff. Just perhaps give an indication as to which positions are we talking about and what the effects thereof was. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, the Honourable Philander. Now, it is very difficult. When you have an environment where your economic growth, we've just come through a period of 0.2% economic growth. It's now increased to 0.4% economic growth with not a very good projection of exponential growth coming into the future. So when you're not even growing at 1%, when your inflation rate, and we're really happy that the inflation rate's coming down, but now it's at 4.4%. So your inflation rate is 5 times higher than your growth rate. And then you have wage negotiations that are 10 and 12%. I mean, they're currently 12%. It's just you can just see we're going into another time where it's just going to be more and more expenditure on the one side and as I said earlier, when you get forced to cut, what do you cut? DG will answer now so we don't fill posts, critical posts. What does that do? It puts so much more pressure on the current team because they have to take on all those other jobs that you can't fill those posts in. And it really does put a lot of pressure on this department. It puts a lot of pressure on the government as a whole. And we're kind of going into the next round of it, which is very, very similar to the previous round. And I mean, that's the real crux of it. And so what happens is you have to cut services. I mean, I think that, we pride ourselves on lean government. We pride ourselves on, making sure we get our percentages right of COE to delivery and overall budgets. I mean, the president kind of almost read us the Riot Act on Wednesday to say, we're in the middle of negotiations. You can't speak publicly about what we spoke about on Wednesday, but it was last Wednesday was the first round. On the 10th is Mincom Bud, where they start dealing with these issues. Then it goes to Budget Council, which is, I think, on the 14th. And then, of course, we're going to have then the minister will give us the medium-term budget policy statement. So South Africa will kind of then know where we stand. It's critical at this time that we get these building blocks in place. And it's scary when you see the COE to delivery in what the impact has done on other provinces. I mean, cheapers in KZN now in education, 93% of their budget is COE. I mean, that is just, you're getting to the stage where your whole budget goes to salaries, and you can't put diesel in the bucket. You can't buy a textbook. You can't. I mean, that cannot be. So it is very, very tough at the moment. Absolutely, and so it really is about turning those pennies over multiple times, and then again, for us, I think the explosion that's going to come in time, if it carries on like this, is the pressure on government officials to deliver that service when you've got the fastest growing population, you've got to deliver more and more services, and we can't fill positions, and so you're expected to do more and more work. Burnout is going to become much more of a thing. So these are the critical issues that we've got to deal with, and that's part of the fight that we've got to have to say, provinces want our fair share. And that's what we want. And really, it's I think in South Africa, it's about the 3 big provinces. And all I can say is that without talking out of that meeting and what's happening forward, is that all provinces are in exactly the same boat and on the same page. Where we're all standing together, and provinces is health and education, which is and social development. Those are the 3 big areas. And in our province, it's also policing, because in the last 6-7 years, we have underfunded education. But basically, we underfunded services, services to citizens, but then primarily education, health, social development, and policing. Those are the four big areas that we've underfunded. And of course, when you underfund, you're underfunding because you want to put money into something else, and the money's gone into, by far, bailout of SOEs. R500 billion in the last 7 years into bailout of SOEs. And we need to reverse that now. That's rewarding, SOEs that are failing. That's rewarding, bad governance. We need to say, okay, that's enough. Obviously, you've got to weigh it up, but because you've got to keep the economy going. But quite frankly, we can't keep on doing that at the cost, or let education, health, policing pay for that, because that's what's happening at the moment. DJ, I don't know if you want to say anything about the posts.
Thank you, Premier, and also thank you, Member Philander, for the question. We've got about 1,000 staff members in this department, and for the last year, we've had exits to the tune of 68. Obviously, that's a combination of, resignations, expiry of contracts, retirements, etc. Underspending on our total personnel budget. Our total personnel budget is 641 million. We've underspent by 2.2 million, which is a mere 0.3%. And a lot of it is because of staff exits, as I said. And then, when a staff member exits, it takes you about 3 to 4 months to fill that position. So it's really just a time lag in terms of that situation. But overall, Member Philander, is that we do not have sufficient funding to fill many of the vacancies that we've got in our department, and therefore we need to make certain trade-offs. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Member Bryant, I have a question from you.
Chair, I'm going to wait until later for the more specific question session. Thanks.
If I can just sneak in a question now at the end of this tranche, it does call for a bit of speculation. After what the Premier's just been saying about the bailout of SOEs, inflation, is it possible just to get briefly an idea of what the potential would be of the increased Eskom rates on the year going forward? Would that contribute to what is a very difficult situation?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I also have the same thing. I don't really want to speculate too much on it. Obviously, if it comes in at 40%, it's going to have a massive destruction of specifically poorer households. So, I mean, we've got to fight that tooth and nail as government. We've got to fight it as Parliament. And that is a process, maybe going to Honourable Said's earlier question, which I don't want to really venture into because Parliament must make up their own minds, but that would be some area that Parliament could also get involved in. And we as a government have already agreed we're going to be involved in it. We've got public hearings coming. We already have started to put our presentations in because we cannot have those kinds of increases. It's just, it's unaffordable.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Let us proceed then on, it's almost 9 o'clock, to the next section, which is the deliberation of the annual report, Vote 1 Premier. I just want to draw everyone's attention to the fact that the PAC, the Public Accounts Committee, will be reviewing sections C and E of this report. So what we can do now is really focus on Part A, Part B, and Part D. I just want to get consensus from the committee. If we go through it section by section and we don't go through literally page by page, would we go through, say, 4 pages at a time, just so that we can keep moving forward? And then we'll take that from there. So if we commence with that, with Part A, we've got the forward by the Premier. I think we've dealt quite extensively with that. Let's start on page 14, which is the report of the accounting officer. 15, 16, 17 to 18. So that would be from section 4.1 in your books to section 4.3, ending with irregular and fruitless expenditure. Let's start with those pages. Are there any comments to be made at this point, or questions or clarifications? I've got Member Said. Anybody else? Member Stevens, you're looking at me like you're thinking of asking that question. I'll put you on the list. Okay, is it just those two for now? Right. Member Said.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks to the Premier and the DG for the responses. I think my first one based on page 14 regarding the recovery plan, speaking about safety, and the Premier spoke about the lack of resources going into policing. Now, I understand that obviously policing is a national competency, but just the safety plan, how does the safety plan now speak to the 3 tiers of government memorandum of understanding that basically has been entered into? And also, just whilst I get the sense, yes, I understand education, health, policing are separate departments, but does Premier not think that by emphasizing and not necessarily increasing, but placing a great emphasis on the budget for education and what's happening in education, you're actually contributing towards a safety plan? Just wanted to get so that because from there, I want to know, and maybe if I can get a definite answer, what percentage of this province's budget goes to education? Then section 4.2, page 17, 4.2, financial results of the department. And also the next page, page 18. It shows on page 18 in the variants that just over 13 million was moved from program 2, 3, and 5 to another program. Now, what I wanted to get a sense there, it's not necessarily making sense because you cut the budget on social services impacting on vulnerable groups, but then we have resources going into ICT. I just wanted to get a sense as to what's the logic behind that, resources from social services to the ICT program. Then also on page 18, section 4.3, whilst you've recovered and written off the 2 cases on fruitless and wasteful expenditure, what process has been put in place to make sure that there's no recurrence, particularly looking at those 2 cases? Then my final one on also page 17, it shows a 98% spend. Now, I know it's just a 2% that has not been, but we've been told also that basically all targets have been achieved, yet there's a 98% spend. Maybe just explain to us that. I think that's basically it for now. I'll get to the Children's Commissioner when I go to page 61 instead of now. Thank you.
Chair, could I just ask, and also just to explain again, you were talking about the safety plan and education's role. Is that the Safer Schools program, or
no?
Is it
broadly the safety plan. I understand that the safety plan is about keeping generally citizens safe, but what does the Premier feel is the role of education in contributing towards that? Not necessarily school safety. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Generally educating citizens. Okay. Thank you.
No, not educating citizens. Education per se.
Oh, the department. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Chair, I'll start and then I'll hand over to DG and any other official that wants to contribute. I think, first of all, the MOU that was signed, I think I've said it in this house before, I'm really grateful to the new minister. In actual fact, I started having engagements with him before he was even the minister, because I knew he was going to be the minister. And I really am grateful to him that he was immediately responsive and engaged with us, and that we got to work and got an MOU going. And perhaps on the point made by the Honourable Saeed, the safety plan is about general safety for the citizens. In actual fact, the safety plan is about saying, how do we use evidence? How do we use data in a different way in policing? And how do we influence a change in South Africa? That's really what I want at the end of the day. And that's what the minister has embraced. So if you look at the MOU, and of course, I don't want to really unpack it here. I think that's the Standing Committee on Police Oversight and Community Safety. That we unpack clause by clause of that MOU. But that MOU is really about saying we've got to do something else. We can't carry on doing the same thing and expect different outcomes, number one. I did, and although I said in the previous answer, I did couch education, health, and policing together, because I was looking at the overall expenditure in South Africa and how it changes. And in the policing question, of course, it's not a provincial competency, it's national, but they have been totally underfunded. The consequences are on this province. So we should have about 28,000 police officers in this province, and we've got 17,000 and dropping. I mean, we've got less police officers now than we had at the beginning of the previous term in 2019. And we've got a fastest growing province in South Africa. I mean, we need more police officers, not less. And that's a consequence of budgetary processes, choices at the center, and it has a massively negative effect on our citizens. And then, of course, every department has a role. Education has a role. Every department. For me, it's critical that our learners are safe. One of the motivating factors in the formation of the safety plan was my own experiences on the ground of how many of our learners end up being affected at school level by gang violence and shootings, whether you're in school and you all have to kind of hide under your desks, or whether you're on the way to school and our young citizens are so distracted and so captured by gangsters. I mean, you can't just walk to school. You've got to go via the body to find out who it is. And I mean, it is just crazy. When you have a look at the analytics amongst young people in our province and whether they suffer trauma specifically in gang-related areas, and you do the analytics where in let's say a fairly safe country, in the 27 or 28 questions that get asked, if you have one tick on the 28 questions, you are considered to have a percentage of trauma. And in our case, almost every box gets ticked. You know, have you experienced abuse in the home? Have you seen a dead body? Have you heard a shot of a firearm? Have you? And they ask all of these questions, and we get a tick almost in every single one. And then the last question to the mother is, does your child suffer any form of trauma? And generally the answer is no, and it is absolutely the opposite. And of course, that plays out in our schools. So it is critical that and this is the difficulty, because in our schools, you've got to be able to manage that. And so the schools are key, as a key component of the safety plan, making sure that your child is safe at school, because that's what the parent expects, but also making sure that the schools also can play a role in building a future safer society also, but critically making sure that the current environment is a safe environment in which to receive education. I think, DG, you can talk about the percentages and the targets, etc., and 4.3.
Chair, just two things. I'm just going to ask Driekus just to deal with the detail on particularly those two cases under fruitless and wasteful. But I mean, the issue was really around the process that we are putting in place. I mean, these cases are not just deemed irrecoverable or written off. We go through an entire process. We also have a debt management policy in the department, which we strictly apply to this. And obviously, Chair, what we also do is if we pick up new matters, we will then amend our policies appropriate to deal with some of these issues. So I'm quite satisfied, that we've got a proper process in place to deal with any fruitless and wasteful expenditure. And in fact, Chair, if you think about our total budget of over 2 billion rand, we only had fruitless and wasteful to the tune of 24,000 rand. That's basically, so it's almost nothing in the department, because I mean, we're a big department, and sometimes, one or two things actually sort of goes wrong. You can see it's only really two cases out of hundreds of cases that we are dealing with in terms of a procurement perspective. Then also, Driekus, I mean, the same, Chair, for irregular expenditure. We go through a proper process. There's also an institutionalized process where you can apply to PT for condonation. They then also do a proper investigation, and then they would reply whether the expenditure is condoned or not. And then obviously, if it's condoned, then the accounting officer can deal with it accordingly. On the issue of vitamins, Chair, member side is correct. We wired funding from programs 2, 3, and 5. And we wired that primarily towards program 4, and that was basically exclusively for our licenses, our software licenses, because our software licenses, we buy them via obviously Microsoft, and they are all dollar denominated. So we cannot manage or control, what happens to the exchange rate. I mean, we know what has happened in world economy, and in fact, we bought the license at a particular rate, and that rate was more than obviously what we had funding for. So we had to basically internally in the department, take some savings in some of the programs and actually divert it to the other programs. And again, I'm quite satisfied, with regards to that. And again, if one look at the total budget that we've got out of the 2 billion, we're talking about 20, it's actually not 20, it's about 15 million or so that's been wired to particularly program 4 to deal with the rand-dollar exchange rate. On our underspending, Chair, our underspending is only 1.2% of our entire budget, so that's about 98.8%, more or less, and it relates to those matters. And as I've indicated in my opening comments, we've also applied for rollovers, particularly with regards to that. And in essence, those are for 4 issues. The Commissioner for Children is obviously included in there. It's about 4 million or so. And then the other issues primarily deals, with program 4, and it deals with licenses, etc. Obviously, Chair, if one look at the APP are those big things that we are doing in the department. It's not every little transaction in the department. So we have achieved all our targets. In fact, there are many of our targets that we've actually exceeded. But some of these underspending, as I said, initially also resulted from like the staff issue, etc., etc. So one must look at the entire department in aggregate. And obviously, once we get to a situation in here and we see there are pressures in some programs, we need to find that ourselves, because obviously, one doesn't want to go for every little cent to the Treasury, who's already under pressure. So we kind of try and wash our own face, if I can use those words, in the department with many of the things. Only those things where we cannot, look at it internally, we then make a proper budget bid for that. And I mean, Member Philander asked the question, in terms of the budget process, in terms of, the different allocations, there is an institutionalized budget process, which the Treasury runs quite effectively. As a department, ourselves in local government is involved in that. Member or Minister Bartman chairs the budget committee, and everything goes through that process before it goes to cabinet. And once it gets to cabinet, it's already gone through an administrative process as well as an executive process. Those processes are all institutionalized. Thanks. And Driekus, can you maybe just talk to the issues of the irregular fruitless cases?
Maybe before I get there, just on the environment, we spend Microsoft licenses or software on behalf of the entire province. So 2/3 of our licenses belongs to the social services. It's just not scored there, it's scored here. So if there's pressure and we move money to IT, it's technically moving money to 67% of social services. That makes sense, just as context. The fruitless and wasteful, the question was, what measures do we put in place to prevent? Now, in this book, under Program 1, there is a financial management capacitation program that we've been running for a number of years. Various officials have gone through it. And because of that, you will see later on in the book, our numbers from millions went down significantly over the last year or two. In fact, in the last year. So in this case, the first one of 4,800 Rand was an anomalous error. So something that we cannot explain, it's a behavioral issue. So it has nothing to do with the training that we give in the FMCP, the official made an error in judgment, didn't take advice or didn't request advice, and then this happened. So that's something that obviously we have disciplined the official, so some learning from it. But essentially, it's just about revisiting the fact that you need to take advice when you do certain things. The 19,500 is around a graduate intern about in 22-23 that left our employ. The supervisor did not alert HR to the fact, and the payments kept running. Now, we know salary overpayments became a risk last year. The auditor raised it. We have issued various communiques to staff as controls in this regard. In this case, it was simply a matter for discipline and therefore also recovery, because the supervisor needs to now pay for not alerting us, not complying with the standing instruction. But as I say, that area has already been controlled since last year. So on the irregular, that relates to a matter that was discovered, actually goes back to 2010, and it has to do with the overpayment of an official salary. And this amount was in fact deemed valid because it's only the 4 quarters of that year. The 319,000 relates to the difference in salary because of that decision. Why it's valid is that the qualification required was indeed then accessed or obtained by the official. So they are now fully in the role and they are fully qualified. So this one is valid, but it has registered. So irregular is not just about supply chain management errors. It's now also about DPSA errors. Anything in terms of your public service regulations can also become irregular. Thank you.
Chair, and then just finally, the question from Member Syed. We spend about 40.1% of the total budget on education. In fact, education has got the biggest budget in this province.
Thank you very much. Member Stevens?
I'm covered, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, right. So then we're moving on. It is section 4.4 on page 19. Strategic focus over the short to medium term period. Then page 20, page 21, up until the end of page 22. And then let's just squeeze in the statement of responsibility and confirmation of accuracy on page 23. I have Member Bryant and then also Member Van Wyk. Member Bryant?
Thanks very much, Chairperson. Before I start, I just want to mention, I think, the new sort of paradigm we find ourselves in with the Government of National Unity. And what you mentioned earlier, Premier, around the closer collaboration with the new minister when it comes to policing is definitely a progressive step in the right direction. And I think the same can be said going forward in our very significant challenge that we are already facing, but that we're going to face going forward as well with regards to climate change, the disasters that emanate from that, but also ensuring our preparedness to deal with climate change through adaptation and mitigation measures. And I just want to refer to page 20, where one of the key priorities mentioned is the mainstreaming of climate change. And then just to move on a little bit further to 4.9, where the programs listed under donations, and the one that was mentioned, the 1.181 million towards officials participating in climate change training programs through something called apolitical. I just want to find out a little bit more about that and, in general, how our officials are being empowered so that everybody understands the context of climate change, but is also able to interact directly with these various concepts that are going to become so much more prominent going forward. Thank you.
Premier?
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much to Honourable Bryant for that question. I mean, as I've said earlier, I mean, our province feels the brunt of climate change. I mean, the amount of floods that we've had, the excessive rain that we've had, and now we're going into the summer season. We are going to have a hotter season. I mean, just feel the temperatures in the last few days. I'm worried. I'm worried about our fire season and our preparedness for the fire season. We've even got discussions happening now whether we have a separate budget. And part of the discussion, especially with Minister Schlabisa now, is about saying, how do we proactively budget? You know, at a national level, the disaster budgets were cut from 10 billion down to 5 billion, and our province has received zero funding for all of the expenditure that we've put in the last year and a half to 2 years because of these disasters. And that's why in the provincial government, what we've done is we've escalated. So I chair the Energy Council run by Mr. Lester. But what we've done now is we've said that water, although we've got an abundance of water right now, it could be exactly the opposite in 3 years' time. And so we've done exactly the same as the Energy Council. We created the Water Council, but we've actually joined the two together because they've got a lot of similarities. So it really is about bringing together our highest risks in climate change. I think our problem in South Africa is we're not budgeting enough for it. And we talk about fires and floods. I'm not even getting to the coastal sea rise and the implication. We've had a taste of it. In the last year and a half, we've seen if you have a high tide and an equinox and a storm all coming together at the same time. I mean, we've seen it in all of our coastal towns, the impact along our coastal towns, even in our neighboring province in the Eastern Cape. I mean, the same thing, even the Doloso on the sides in Paberga, they are insufficient now to keep the sea at bay often. It's not just as an occurrence once a year, it is often. And so we are, I think, in deep trouble here with climate change. So that's why we've escalated it within our government, also escalating it within the discussions that we're having at national government. And I think as a country, we have to start putting more money towards it. But I'm extremely honored to have been nominated to represent Africa now at the Climate Under 2, which will be for the next 2 years. I've taken actually over from the Premier of KZN, who was the previous chair, but it's for Africa. It's not for even for South Africa, it's for Africa. And I serve on this platform. We have the 4 chairs. There's one from Africa, one from Europe, one from the Americas, and one from, I suppose, Asia, but Southeast Asia. So it's the premier from a province in South Korea. It's a premier from a province in Mexico, representing Africa's. The Americas, and then Europe is represented by the premier or the Prime Minister of Scotland. And we've just had our first meeting, and I mean, I'll give you a very scary statistic that amongst governments, organizations, NGOs, and entities that all have a zero footprint plan by 2050. I mean, South Africa's got one. Most organizations have got a 2050. It's like beyond when any of us are going to be in office. And the problem that there is, if they do an analysis of the plans, they've got the overall plan, but if they have a look at the strategies and the actual delivery to that plan, only 4% are credible across the world. 4%. So we all talk about it, we talk up a good game. And then when it comes to Africa, we are responsible for 3.8% of the world's greenhouse gases. 3.8%. We have 600 million citizens on this continent, half, 50%, who have no electricity. And yet we have gas and coal and oil and whatever else. But we are expected to play our part, which we are doing, in making sure we're not, destroying the carbon footprint of the world, and we will hold back, and we're going to be held accountable through carbon border taxes. But we are not responsible for it. It's basically the global north that's responsible, and they are not paying enough. And so that's really what we've got to get. We've got to get national and provincial focus areas in climate change, but we've also got to make sure that Africa is playing its role and also getting its fair share across the planet, because at the moment it's not. And I'm very happy that we are making a lot of noise. We've got a huge platform coming up in November because we get to host the Earthshot Prize. That just gives us the platforms to talk about this a lot more and to showcase, first of all, the things that we are busy doing, but also to showcase the consequences for us here in the Western Cape, in South Africa, and in Africa. So yeah, it's a big thing. We are definitely in this government stepping up and taking far more responsibility, making sure. I mean, that's going to be my next task, is that we've got our plan. Now we need to test the credibility of that plan, and are we getting to it? I mean, right now, I'm already hearing rumblings that we've actually got to push back some of those boundaries in South Africa. I mean, we're expected to be decommissioning coal power plants, but we don't have enough electricity. And so now that's putting pressure on our own plan in South Africa. So we've got a lot of work to do. DG,
Chair, I think Premier has responded to the detail. Maybe just for Member Bryant, is that from where we're sitting, climate change have been mainstreamed across government. In fact, for the first time now, as part of our upcoming budgetary processes for the next 3 years, we will have a dedicated discussion on climate change. Included in that will be disaster management, as Premier said, and we will actually add water and energy to the discussion too. And what we do, I think, transversely as a government, because as I said, we take transversal responsibility for this. Whenever these opportunities come up, we would normally nominate officials that work in the space. So the generally people be from the Department of Local Government, Environmental Affairs, our own department, and then obviously departments like Department of Infrastructure, because they need to deal, with some of these issues. But we've got a comprehensive report that's available on all these stuff that sits within table 4.9. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Member van Wyk?
Thanks, Chair. I note that on pages 20 and 21, we refer to broadband 2.0 and the donation funding that we received for feasibility study on broadband infrastructure to expand network connectivity in the province. I think that was 9.273 million. Can you perhaps just update us where we are on that very important project?
Chair, that 9.2 relates obviously to the initial work that we've done around the feasibility study. The process on allocating broadband 2.0 by CETA, that's now concluded. So we are now in the final stages of just sorting out all the agreements and stuff like that. So I've met with my own team last week and Friday to obviously speed up the particular process. But we've got a transition plan in place between broadband 1 and broadband 2.0. So once we've concluded all the due diligence stuff, we will then be able to finally sign, the MOU with the service provider that's been allocated the contract by CETA.
Thank you very much. Okay, then if we moved from page 24, which is point 6, strategic overview. That is page 24, page 25 to the top of page 26. We then have legislative and other mandates. I don't know if anybody has any burning questions about a list of legislation. So let's just include that and run to the organizational structure diagrams on page 31. That will take us to the end of part A. Let's deal with that. Let's see who wants to ask questions there. I've got Member Said. Anybody else? Okay, Member Said, please go ahead.
Chair, thank you very much. Mine is with regards to the staffing, the organizational structure of the department. I heard the point made about the budget cuts, and I just wanted to know whether, firstly, just broadly, whether the reasons for not filling these vacancies. I see there's a few vacancies: the head of corporate services, the directorate for connected government buildings and schools, which I think that's an important one. And then the Directorate for Training. Those three, I just wanted to get a sense, is the reason due to the budget cuts? If not, what are the reasons? And do we have a process in place to ensure that these critical posts are filled? Then I just see with regards to, I think it's Dr. Fast's position. I see Dr. Fast holds two positions, Dr. Hildegard. I think there's a Chief Directorate for Policy and Strategy, as well as Chief Directorate responsible for Manager of International and Priority Programs. I just wanted to get a sense, what's the reason for the holding of two positions? Is it due to cost? Is it due to the positions basically overlapping? And that. Thank you so much.
Please.
Chair, yes, I mean, the main reason for this is primarily budget cuts, and I can quickly run through the stuff. I mean, Member Syed will see it's not only Dr. Fast, which would sit in two places. I mean, we've got, as an example, Ms. Estrazer, which is just sort of one line below, who's actually the acting branch head, as well as obviously being the Chief Director responsible for HR. And then in some of our other units, we do exactly the same. Because Hilton was responsible, he's responsible for CI, but he's obviously now being seconded to the Department of Police Oversight. But Hilton also fulfills, certain dual responsibilities. So what we've done is, where we don't have a branch head, I mean, there are basically two of the branches. We don't have a branch head for Program 1. Driekus, sitting next to me, you would see that he's a Chief Financial Officer, plus he's the branch head. So his picture would be on both sides. Program 2, Zenith's picture is also on both sides. Zenith is the branch manager acting. And then she's also the Chief Director, Strategic Management Information. As I said, there are many others that does exactly the same. So those are primarily for budget reasons. But there are also issues around, institutional efficiency. So at the moment, I mean, we have no plan to fill the head of the CSC position. We do not actually operate on a CSC model. The DDGs in this department reports directly to me. The only component that, in my view, is CSC, or where we provide a service to others, where we are providing an agency service. It's primarily really only HR and internal audit. All the others are .P core functions. So we're also aligning our structure to actually speak to that. But this is obviously the approved structure, and that is why we're showing it in this particular format. So it's for two reasons: budget, and then obviously institutional efficiency. On the position of Directorate Training, we are currently interviewing for that position. That person retired in the beginning of, I think it was either end of January or end of February. So we are currently interviewing for that position. I mean, if Sean can indicate, I mean, the Director, Connected Government Buildings and Schools, I mean, that function is currently being fulfilled by the CEI team. So where there are vacancies, it doesn't mean that that particular position has not been fulfilled, or the work that's required is not being fulfilled. I mean, between Sean, and obviously Mark, and then and also Mr. Manasseh, Joel Manasseh, and the rest of the team, they're fulfilling, all the work. And you can see also the ICT support, particularly to schools. Mr. Latagan is actually fulfilling that position. So I'm quite comfortable, Chair, with it. These are obviously senior positions. They come at a lot of money in relation to budget. So we try to be efficient and rather steer some of our funding towards, frontline services issues. And that's why I talk about the efficiency of our structure. And we've been operating like this for the last 2 years, at least 2 years plus. And in fact, I think it's a much more efficient way of dealing with matters in the department. And where positions are crucial, I would approach the Premier and say, listen, we need this. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to fulfill our position. But internally, Chair, we are bleeding on capacity. I wouldn't lie about it, but we try our level best to do what we need to do within the current envelope. Thanks.
Thank you very much. That then concludes Part A. We're moving on to Part B. Part B runs from page 34 to page 100. I just want to reassure everybody that it is now 9:30. We will take a break at a suitable time between 10:30 and 11. So let's start with Part B on page 34. We have the Auditor General's report, then the overview of departmental performance. On page 36, main services and standards and the change management plan up to page 37. Can I see hands there? Member Said? Okay, Member Said, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Page 34. Let me not really bother. I think, look, page 54, it's just very, very broad. Service delivery environment, the dwindling resources and service delivery demands, increasing the need for leveraging data and technology, and that the department ramped up efforts to spearhead. I just wanted to get a sense then as to, and I don't want to, I think we'll take that into another annual report of education. But given the dwindling resources already and the increasing service delivery demands, just wanted to get a sense from this office. I know it's education's focus and the fight is happening at the national level. Are we looking at innovative ways to ensure that the teaching cuts in the education department can be averted? Then page 35, interventions that have been responded to the climate change. Again, I'm going to come back to the cry by some and for the provision in the constitution of the province around the environmental commissioner. I know it's not on the table currently, but don't you think, I mean, given that there is a provision and that does the department not think that the appointment of an environmental commissioner will assist, given the issues we are facing around climate change? Then page 41, energy resilience. On energy resilience, I just wanted to get a sense as to the details of the program, but within the context of assisting struggling municipalities. And yeah, just with regards to that, and then that's linked to page number 58. Also energy.
Hang on. I know you're very enthusiastic, but we're just going to go through from 38 right now to 41.
Oh, to 41. Okay.
And then you can have a bit of water while they answer that.
Okay, I'll go to 58 later.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to the Honourable Said. I think the first part is about, you know, what are we doing to avert the teacher cuts? I can assure you that that is the primary focus of everything that we are doing. Teacher cuts, nurses cuts, social worker cuts. And it was primarily the discussion topic of last Wednesday's extended cabinet. And it's a common voice across all of the provinces, but primarily KZN and Gauteng and ourselves, because we are the three provinces that are the hardest hit. And so absolutely, we really, really are. And as I said, the president, really pushed harder to say, please, keep this under wraps because it's in a process. And of course, as I said earlier, it's got its timeline. So I'm pretty certain we'll get the news. And it's very difficult because you've got a willingness in Treasury, but it's very difficult because we've got zero growth rate in our economy and a shortfall in taxes because of a very slow growth rate. So it is very hard. And of course, a borrowing ceiling that we've hit. But I just want to say that we are putting every effort to get a shift in the change away from bailouts towards the critical services. So absolutely. I don't know if DG wants to talk about maybe some of the administrative processes. Then on the environmental commissioner, actually, when the Honourable Said was asking the question, I went, hey, I left the verbatim answer that I was going to give you in my office. It was going to be the word for word answer that Tasneem Aesop gave me when I sat exactly where the Honourable Saeed is sitting, and I asked that exact same question, and the department gave exactly the same answer that unfortunately I'm giving on this side, because when the Constitution was put in place, we did not have sufficient environmental legislation. We now have extensive environmental legislation. In actual fact, I'm very proud of our legislation, both in South Africa and in the province. We have world-class environmental legislation. And so obviously that would just be another layer of expense. And that's what the argument has always been. We're in the start of a new term. And I presume, Honourable Saeed, that is the position of our government at the moment. We have had a piece of legislation in place in the last term. We'll have to have a look at how we resurrect it. I'm always open to discussions on it to say, well, spending that money, what are we going to get for it versus our other spending pressures? But that's always been why put this extra money towards a commissioner when we have all of the extra layers of legislation. And then energy resilience and smaller municipalities. I mean, Mr. Lester can answer much of that question. But obviously, all of the energy that gets delivered in South Africa actually gets, in the Western Cape, gets delivered via municipalities in the energy plan. Well, that's not all of it, but that's where the tenders go out from the municipalities, and it is our support of those municipalities. Obviously, the bigger municipalities have the capacity, but even saying that, it's something that municipalities have never done before. So us, with our partnership with the World Bank and other international partnerships, helping with advisory, even down to project management help with municipalities. Obviously, the city's got the capability, but our other municipalities don't necessarily always have them. And so whether it's the bigger municipalities like Saldanha and Stellenbosch and George, which are quite way ahead. But then that's why we also put that plan in place for a small municipality, and that's the project that's running in Riversdale at the moment as part of the Hessequa municipality, because we've got to give them the support that they need. We've never done this before, and it's not been a mandate of local government, other than, say, their grid system and buying power from Eskom and reselling it. There's a whole new world that we live in at the moment, and it's complex, and that's part of the energy plan and the support. But DJ, I don't know if you want to come in then, and then maybe Mr. Lester.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think Premier spoke about what we're doing in education to obviously avert some of the issues. I mean, Premier's correct. I mean, even administratively, we've taken the matter up with National Treasury. The matter has been discussed by our education department at the HEDCOM meeting, as well as the relevant meetings where the minister also attends. So it's the number one priority at the moment for the entire education sector. And also, obviously, the Department of Health is also impacted by this, and that's also on the agenda nationally. Between the Premier and Minister Baartman, that was also, one of the keys that they've raised with the President at last week's meeting, and there will be another meeting later this week where Premier and I will also again make sure that we raise the particular matter. So we're looking for solutions, Chair, but I mean, at the moment, it is unaffordable because we simply didn't receive the money from National, to fund the increases in the salary budgets for those, basically those two departments primarily. Then on the energy stuff, I mean, member side, I mean, there's a whole table in this book. It's called the Overview of Provincial Revenue Expenditure on page 79. That exactly spells out how our 780 or 760 million more or less have been allocated over the MTF. It's divided into about 7 key areas. On the municipal side, it's around municipal pool buying, the municipal IPP procurement in Stellenbosch. Then there are some funding that we've set aside for project preparation. And then obviously we're piloting the renewable energy solution in municipalities, and Premier spoke about the one within Hessequa. So that's the sizable allocations. And then there are also some money set aside for grid generation and financing, some capacity money to implement. And then obviously the key thing that Premier also spoke about, particularly as it relates to, the issue around energy and the issue around climate change, it's green economy. ecosystem support, and then some of the work that we've done internally, with regards to alternative energy support for particularly SMEs, some of our work around the load shedding stuff. I think Premier responded already to the issue around the environment, Commissioner, and then I have responded to the issue. So it's on page 79 of the main budget overview book. Thanks. Alvi?
Oh, thank you, Chair, and to the members. I think for municipalities, there's quite a few things that we are doing. I think firstly is we've created a project preparation facility, which allows municipalities, any municipality, to apply for assistance if it wants to go to the market for energy. So that comes in the form of advisory services, but also in the form of resources. So we provide transaction advisory services, contract management, consulting engineering services. Part of that also covers things like feasibilities that we assist municipalities with. We've also kicked off exercises with a number of municipalities, Prince Albert being one, Witzenberg being another, looking at the walking down of the assets that they have, the energy assets, to look at asset conditions. We're also looking at microgrid feasibilities for those municipalities as options for them. And then, of course, looking at how do they look at renewable energy in their municipal networks. So there's quite a few programs that's taking place. We also have a energy efficiency program that we run with municipalities, as well as a demand side management program, where we identify potential areas where we can be more efficient and mechanisms that they can then use to apply for funding via the national government for energy efficiency. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Member Bryant?
Thanks, Chairperson. Chairperson, going through the reports on the monitoring, reporting and evaluation plans, I mean, the overall stats are quite good, quite positive, seem to be hitting targets. My only question is in terms of, it's on page 38, the very first one, the satisfaction measures, percentage of residents satisfied, identified key services. I see the baseline is 0, saying that it's a new intervention, and I apologize if this is a silly question, but I'm just trying to establish what was used prior to that to measure the overall satisfaction with services of residents. Thanks.
So please, Premier, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to Honourable Bryant. We never used to do customer satisfaction surveys. So that's why it starts from something brand new. But, I mean, I spoke earlier about the listening to citizens, the unannounced visits, but that's, us as government officials going to the coalface or a First Thursday, it's actually a very sort of narrow slice. And as an organization, I mean, we going through a culture journey process, but you need to understand, what is the temperature on the ground? Businesses do it all the time. Why shouldn't we, as a government, do it? So that's exactly what we've done. We've set up a customer satisfaction survey. We make contact. We do these surveys, and we ask questions about the services that they get. But it's a new program. We're getting into it, and then that hopefully will also steer us as we go as an organization. DJ, I don't know if you want to add.
Thank you very much. Then if we are on page 40, if we can just push the envelope to page 46, which is the end of that section, it's organizational environment at 2.3. Then we have key policy developments and legislative changes. Part 3, which is progress towards achievement of institutional impacts and outcomes. And yeah, that takes us to the end of the section at page 46. Questions on this section now? Going. Okay, gone on that section. Then if we start at page 47, program 1, it's executive governance and integration. We have page 48, 49, 50 and 51, those 4 pages. That takes that section 4.1 in totality. Any questions there? Okay. Then on page 53, we start with program 2, Provincial Strategic Management. That is page 53, 54, 55. I'm going to take those three because then we have a diagram after that. Anything in that section? Then on page 56, 4.2.2, we have some tables. Also page 57, page 58, page 59. We can take that to page 61 because that's 4.2.5. I do know that Member Saeed had a question on page 58. And are there any other hands other than Member Saeed? No. Please go ahead.
No, thank you very much, Chair. Page 58, a key investment effort was the strategic support of energy resilience and dissemination of load shedding packs to vulnerable communities. Look, I welcome the load shedding packs. Now, obviously, we've seen some of the reduction in load shedding, but notwithstanding not having load shedding, I think we must still, is there still a plan? Because I believe that we should still be looking at alternative sources of energy, even if we don't have load shedding at all. I think we need to move in that direction, particularly, and I'm glad that we see an emphasis on assistance to vulnerable communities. I wanted to know in that regard, has the department and particularly the unit dealing with energy and the officials looked at an approach towards assisting or your low income households, particularly in the rural areas, and particularly in the houses that are being built by the Department of Infrastructure, with regards to residents being able to take care of the basic needs, and looking at various energy supplies or sources of energy outside of the grid for those particular households. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to Honourable Saeed. I mean, on this page specifically, linking it to the energy packs, what was happening in society is, in actual fact, the energy crisis was actually making the Gini coefficient worse. Because what's happening is businesses and middle class and above households were able to invest in solar systems, battery systems, etc. And I mean, the numbers show us that with us, it wasn't an incentivized investment. They always say that Vietnam is sort of like the world record holder because they put 9 gigawatts of power in place in 1 year, but it was very incentive driven. I mean, they spending, I think it's $13 billion a year for 20 years in subsidies going back to those that invested in these systems. I mean, we've got a very small 2-year tax break that gets given. It's really a tiny percentage, but it was the disaster, the lack of energy and the load shedding that actually forced those that could afford it to put in alternative systems, whether it just be an inverter or whether it be a solar system with an inverter. And I mean, South Africa was then recognized as a place that I actually think our record is probably better than Vietnam's, because ours was not a massively tax or government subsidized. But the problem, again, Gini coefficient gets worse. And so when we were having that discussion, and the municipalities, that really concerned me is that the poorer households. So number one, I mean, we rolled out these energy packs to the GBV shelters, to the old age homes. And then how do you get the biggest impact? First of all, we need to protect education. We've already got a massive loss of learning because of the pandemic. and the load shedding is just making it worse. So that was why the choice was made on the energy packs. And of course, if you impact on either a junior school learner or a matriculant, you're also impacting on the family, because the energy packs had a battery system, a little solar panel, 3 different lighting systems, charging facility. So it actually was something that would be very beneficial in the household in general, but also, giving that learner the opportunity to study. And it was specifically done because I could just see this Gini coefficient getting worse and worse and worse, and the poorest of the poor. On the second part of the question, I mean, I know that more and more and more of our human settlement delivery is including solar panels for water, delivering hot water, and energy efficient lighting systems. But we are not there yet to actually have an off-the-grid solution. I think that costing would just be quite prohibitive. But I say yet because it's something we've got to keep on looking at. I don't know if Mr. Lester or DG wants to add.
Maybe just definitely maybe on the energy packs. I mean, for member side, it's definitely to the most vulnerable. So we've dished out obviously to grade 1s in quintiles 1 to 3, which are your most poorest schools. Then quintile 1 to 3 matrics, and then particularly in our DSD facilities for people in frail care as well as in disabled. So that's the key component of the load shedding pack. And as Premier said, it's more than just a load shedding pack. It brings dignity, it brings a more safer environment, and obviously at the end of the day we want to make sure that people have got access. In addition to that, given the question that member side has raised, member side, we are busy with additional research through our universities to actually see to what extent we can explore initiatives like that. So when we build a house, our typical RDP house, to what extent can one install either solar panels or some other mechanisms, particularly for your most vulnerable communities. And obviously, it will have some form of rural linkages, because in most of our rural areas, quintiles 1 to 3 schools, are actually spread across that particular issue. I don't know, obviously, there's anything that you maybe want to add to it?
No, thank you, Chair. So 2 other things I'd like to add. One is definitely that we are looking at revising the building standards in Department of Infrastructure to include efficiencies. So that includes solar water geysers as well as efficient building materials for lighting and heating. I think the other thing the DG has mentioned is we're engaging both the University of the Western Cape and the University of Johannesburg around a fairly low-cost battery and inverter system, particularly aimed at lower LSMs to make it more affordable. And then I think lastly, in some of the communities that we have engaged in the rural areas, from a technical perspective, the solution does look like it's going to be a microgrid solution, an off-grid system, because the cost to bring the network into those areas are far too expensive. So we have to look at localized solutions there. Typically, we look at a solar installation that has a battery that is either partially owned and or secured by the community themselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I must say, I think that point about dignity is very well made indeed. It's something one doesn't always think about. Then program 3, people management. That is on page 63. I think let's take that as a unitary matter. So it would run from 63 to 71. There are quite a lot of pictures there and also a grid system. So I think let's take those questions now. Is anybody, any hands? Now I'm also checking online. I know we have a member online, but I'm not seeing his hand. Okay, Member Zahid, any others? No, Member Zahid?
Chair, did we pass 61? I'm not sure if it's
I think we can go back to 61. That's fine.
Okay, if I could just on 61, the issue around the Children's Commissioner. Now I know, I just wanted to again to reiterate, I heard the point around the building, but then it also speaks about the underspending due to slower than anticipated filling of posts. Is the issue of filling of posts linked to not being able to have found a sufficient building as yet for the Children Commissioner's offices to be housed? Because if that is the case, I mean, it's really not something that we can accept. I think pressure must be placed. We need to get that going as soon as, because there was a lot of effort collectively across parties last term to ensure that we've got a Children's Commissioner. So I just wanted to get then, just also on the Children's Commissioner, does the role, and I know we've had our engagements with the Commissioner, but just from the side of, I know you don't necessarily tell the Commissioner what to do because you are part of the executive, but do you think that the Children's Commissioner ought to also be playing a greater role with regards to building relations with community organizations? And do you think that, again, the premises and the staffing issue, because my understanding is with this insufficiency, it's difficult for them to do that. Do you think that that will address that particular matter? So we also saw that the Children's Commissioner sent 3 Western Cape child human rights defenders to the United Nations Committee on the Rights of the Child in Switzerland. Now, these kind of things, there was resources for that. Do you think that these kind of programs actually help communities on the ground? Just looking in terms of the manner in which resources are spent, you know, given that you are saying that you've not been able to fill posts, this issue with the building. Also, what is the challenge in ensuring that we can get a good premises for them? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Chair, I'll just briefly high level and then DG, because he's actually at the coalface actually. I mean, it's a very difficult position because the Children's Commissioner reports to Parliament, not to us. And we also don't want to direct the Children's Commissioner. I mean, that's not the job. The job is separate from us. So that becomes difficult. You know, we must enable and aid. You know, basically that's where it must stop, and obviously meet with her, you know, whenever she wants us to meet with her. But I mean, I think as DG has said, there's some issues on trying to get the office space. I mean, at the same time, we've created the office space. There's offices within our space, but that again is in itself, I mean, we're happy that they could use our office space, but that also creates a bit of a blurring line. DG.
Chair, on the first question, the filling of posts is definitely not linked to the new building. They have premises. It's at 80 St. George's, it's a St. George's Street, you know, down in St. George's Mall. Lovely building. The issue is really around getting the appropriate people to fill those positions. As a department, I must also say, where we go through our budget committee process and we say no to certain positions, all positions of the Children's Commissioner we have not said no to, because that budget is ring-fenced. We don't get involved in the budget. We don't get involved on, you know, the appointment, or let's call it the filling of staff from a finance perspective. So we've enabled that office to do what they need to do. It's really just the quality of the applications and to go through the processes. And obviously, you know, from where she's sitting, people exiting the system, to which we've got no control of. So institutionally in the department, I mean, the Children Commissioner provides me with 4 quarterly reports as part of my APP indicators. I must also indicate that those reports are very comprehensive. As the accounting officer, I do not get involved in the way she runs her business, because, I mean, she's appointed, you know, through the statutory provisions. We make sure that every cent that she spent goes through the necessary processes and that it's aligned with government policies, prescripts, and procedures. And I must also indicate, Chair, we haven't had any issue between the department, our finance team, even our operational team, in supporting the Children's Commissioner in terms of what she requires to do. It is just those internal challenges that we've got, you know, herself and ourselves have got no control over. So Louise in the team helps her with appointing staff. In fact, I mean, the last email I said to them is to say, please prioritize, you know, the filling of positions within the Office of the Children's Commissioner. And as Premier has also indicated, you know, we've got a clear line of accountability. So as an AO, if she writes me a submission to say, I want to send 3 children as an example to, overseas, and this and this and this is what they're going to do, she needs to make that decision because she's responsible for the unit. I will make sure that, that it's within our prescripts, obviously, that she's got budget for all those things, and that she must then comply with the necessary stuff. And in fact, even her own request to travel overseas, Premier and I don't get involved in that. We simply note it, okay, because she's a statutory appointment and the approvals actually goes via the office of the speaker. That's where she gets all the approvals from. But our relationship, there's no breakdown in the relationship between this department and the Children's Commission. And as I said, I meet with her quite regularly on any matter that that bothers her.
Thank you very much. Now, I didn't see any hands on the People Management Program 3, but I just want to ask on page 69, the second paragraph, it talks about the youth development programs and the skills development. I just want to find out, is there any way of monitoring how those young people subsequently do in the system? Is there any way of monitoring the success of them due to the development and the training? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, it is a program that I think we're all very proud of. It's been running for quite a few years now. And we do. The interesting thing is, these are young people needs. So they finish matric, they're not in college, they don't have a job. And for me, the most interesting statistic is that how many of them, once they've had an opportunity in one of our departments, actually want to go back and study because it helps them make a choice. Well, now I actually want to get into social work, or now I want to get into finance, but I mean, we can also give further reports and details if the committee wants. DG?
Yeah, I mean, Louise can maybe say something about it, but we do analysis of what's happening. So we can tell you exactly how many people came in. It's not just the pay program, but we also have our graduate internship program where we actually pull graduates. And in fact, what we want to do as a next step is actually make some of these pay interns now, available to some of the national departments in this province that are struggling. So one example that impacts business is what's currently happening at the Masters office. I mean, I visited them, and we're talking about people here that probably just need to sort out files. They're looking for 2 people that have got legal degrees to assist them in their trust unit. So we've put a call out there to assist them, and the next step is also to assist institutions like maybe Home Affairs or some of the national departments, because what we're saying is that, it's about the people that live in this province. It's not about which department takes responsibility, for it. And if we can make life easier for citizens in this province or communities in this province, we will use programs like this to actually do that. And even in our graduate intern program, it's one of the best programs that we are running. And a lot of that, the graduate interns actually take up permanent positions in government. And in fact, we're also now using them in Henriette's unit, that deals with internal audit and governance and all of that, particularly your graduate interns. So we're spreading them across government, and we can give those numbers anytime in terms of the impact. And as Premier said, and we can come in here, many of the matriculants, what is actually so encouraging for me personally is after they completed their year, they actually go back to university because they love what they're doing. They would like to come and work for Western Cape government in certain areas, and they go back to university and actually complete, formal qualification. And then obviously this all becomes part of training and developing our youth, because at the end of the day, it is about youth development. I don't know, Louise, if you want to say something about it.
Yes, thank you, Chair. In terms of the pay interns, 23-24, we are on 561. And if we go to the student interns, that's now interns that needs to complete the practical side to get their qualification. We are 13. Graduate interns, we are 173. If we go to matric interns, it's 13. And then learnerships, we're at 55. That's the figures.
That's very good to hear, I must say. Thank you very much. Member Kaiser-Philander?
Chair, thank you. I just failed to remember now, is this program exclusive to the Western Cape? Or is there similar projects in other provinces as well?
I mean, I'm sure there are other programs that deals with youth development generally, but I mean, as far as I know, we've got the only, province that runs this premier advance. We call it premier advancement of the youth, but it's got many angles to it. So I can't speak for other provinces really.
So, Chair, I don't know. That's quite an interesting question. We should actually find out, because I'm sure there are other youth programs in other provinces. But perhaps using that question as a as a lever, one of the other programs that I'm really proud of in this government, it's been running for many years now, it's actually celebrating its 10th anniversary now, is the Yebones, the Year Beyond program, which started a few years ago. I've just come, in actual fact, on Friday, I was part of the youth program where they get introduced to businesses and departments. So you'll have a traffic department, but you'll also have a MSC cruise line company there, or a bank. All the banks seem to be there. So we've been running this program for 10 years now. Later this month, we've got 2 of these sessions where businesses and the young people get partnered, and they look for further opportunities beyond the year that they work with us in our departments. And in actual fact, the 3rd open day is actually in Pabeja. So we've started to roll out the program in the Eastern Cape, and we're going to see if I can get the Eastern Cape Premier to join us at that program, because we're trying to get it into other provinces.
That's very good to hear. Thank you. Right. So program 4, Centre for E-Innovation. This is something I always find very interesting. That is on page 73, 74, 75, 76. It actually finishes on page 80. I think let's do that as a block, because then one actually also has some cognizance of how it works in general. Any hands there with people? I've got Member Said. Okay. Right, let's start there. Member?
Thank you very much. Page 74, developing a new user interface for the WCD school online admission system. We're getting to that period now of online applications and picking up quite a number of challenges. I just wanted to, if you could maybe just take us through this particular interface. What is it all about? How is it going to improve the system, the online system? Because there's still, and probably it's work in progress, but there's quite a few learners applications that are falling through the cracks, where we've had to push the department, and they've done it, to actually go now to places, sit with parents and the laptop, let them do it there so that you prevent the falling through the cracks. But what are the some of the challenges that you have come across, and what are the ways in terms of basically refining this particular system? Thank you.
Thank you.
Our team can speak about it, but I mean, Member Side would be aware of what happened something like 2 years ago, when we had our initial challenges. I mean, I'm sure Evan can speak about some of the experiences last year where our system didn't actually, fall down, and we've been able to deal, with all the stuff. But for me, I think the biggest improvement was when we started to go out to communities, community centers. People could even go to your centers in education in terms of the different districts, other than going to the schools. And then the issue of, letting parents know well in advance whether the learners have been accepted or not. As the member said, I mean, these things are always work in progress, because obviously we deal with the challenges also as they come, but we are far advanced in terms of where we've been a couple of years ago. So I don't know, Evan, are you or Sean is going to talk to the detail?
Thanks, DJ, through your chair. So 3 years ago, we had challenges in terms of the infrastructure, where it was hosted at CETA and couldn't cope with the volumes. We tried something last year in terms of changing up. We still had a few challenges, but this year we effectively moved all our infrastructure, our Oracle infrastructure, from CETA into the Oracle Cloud. We also changed the interface of the school admission system. And to date, we've had basically 0 issues. Grade 1 and 8 completed earlier this year with zero downtime or zero issues from a technical perspective. Currently the transfers are in progress, or the other grade applications are in progress. The department, Western Cape Education Department, goes out to various sites. From a system perspective, it's all available, it's up. We've implemented the new interface for the school's admissions, and we've, in actual fact, on Thursday last week, the first Thursday, the director there responsible for school admissions indicated that to date they've run with zero issues. He's quite happy with the system. Thanks.
Okay, thanks very much. I don't see any other hands on that section. We then have program 5, which is corporate assurance, commences on page 82. And that section runs to 89. Do we have any questions there? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands there. Program 6, legal services. That is page 91. That runs to page 95. Anyone there? Okay, and then on page, we're making good progress here, on page 96, transfer payments. This is the last part of section B. That is page 96, 97, and then 98 and 99 are conditional grants, finishing with capital investment on page 100. Anything there? All right. Then section C is being dealt with by public accounts. I think that is this afternoon. So then we go on to human resources management on part D. That commences on page 124. Do people want to use this opportunity to take a break? Or should we push through section D? I am seeing some people nodding. I think they would like to. Okay, it's almost 10:15. Let's come back at 10:30 and we'll kick off with section D. Thank you. Okay. Right, we are now on part D, which is the people management oversight. That is the last section that we will be dealing with in this committee today. So page 124 is the introduction, the status of people management of a department, employee performance management. Let's run to page 126, where we'll then start in the next round with the people management oversight stats. So on pages 124, 125, and 126, do we have any specific questions there? Not. Okay. People management oversight statistics on page 126, 127, and then 128 to 129, which is employment and vacancies. Questions on that section? No. Part D, which is 3.3, job evaluation on page 130, page 131, employment changes on 132, and then we have annual turnover rates, reasons why staff resigned, up to 133. Then on 134, we have different age groups. I've just got one question there, if I may. The issue of the two-pot system, which I know is relatively new, so to speak, has that had any impact, particularly the different age groups of staff who have been resigning? I just want to ask the department. That's page 134. Have you seen an uptick there?
Yeah, I mean, we can say, we're doing the analysis at the moment. In fact, we had a long discussion at our provincial top management meeting. I issued a letter to staff, obviously in relation to this, also warning them about sort of, early extraction of their pension monies moving forward, and also to be cautious, around some of the people out there that just want to lay their money, on people's pension. So we've actually asked Louise, who's the head of HR in the province, to actually do a full-on analysis for all departments in relation to resignations over the last 5 months, because remember the two-pot system kicked in on the 1st of September. So what has happened 3-4 months before that, and what has actually happened in relation to resignations, particularly in the month of July and August. And then in addition to that, to try and get information from the GPAF, which is our pension fund, because we don't keep that information, the amount of people that have actually made application, to withdraw some of their pension money. So when that's available, we can, share that. I've got no issue with that. Obviously, we won't share personal information of people, but I think from a statistics perspective, it's probably a good idea.
Thank you very much. Then on page 135, we have promotions by critical occupation. Getting onto employment equity, that goes on to 136. Then we have 137 recruitment, 138 promotions, terminations, disciplinary actions, basically to the end of 3.5 with skills development. Any questions there? I see Member Saeed. Okay, Member?
Thank you, Chairperson. I've got 2 questions, page 135 first. Just in terms of the top management and senior management, I'm looking at the issue around the demographics. Now, I know obviously the priority is competence, people who are suited for the positions. We don't want to undermine that, but I'm just thinking in terms of the kind of province that we are trying to build and incentivize. African representation seems to be quite low. Just want to see what efforts are being made there, but also just to encourage it. Let's, in spite of the funding issues, let's try to ensure that we improve in that regard. Then just with regards to page 139, there's been a suspension, or I think looks like two suspensions without a salary and a final written warning. Could just get a sense as to if you are at liberty to divulge the reasons behind those cases. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think
Yeah.
DG, is that?
Yeah. Yeah. On the issue on page 135, I mean, I've been on record saying this previously. I mean, I personally believe in diversity and a more diverse team, because I mean, that's, you know, once you have a more diverse team, it actually just takes you further. So the one issue is that we've not been able to fill many of our senior positions. So that's obviously a massive constraint. We are in the process now of recruiting, you know, for senior managers, and the issue around employment equity is on the table. I mean, because obviously we want to improve, you know, diversity across the spectrum, but particularly within our senior management team. What we've also started to do, our member side, is also building our own timber. Okay, because what we see a lot is obviously, you know, we struggle to recruit people, particularly from the designated groups within the senior management team. And one of the strategies that we've got is actually to start to build our own timber. If we're not happy with an appointment, you know, we even at times, you know, go out to the market for a second time or for a third time, and sometimes we even headhunt, you know, for these things. But diversity is important. We cannot build, you know, a province or a country if we are kind of blind to those things. That's our reality, and I think we need to do it. But I mean, obviously, we're not doing anything, you know, in terms of competency. So we say you need to be also competent, but part of the role that we need to play, particularly as a management team, is to build the competence, you know, with regards to our own staff. And as I said previously, I believe diversity just takes you further. Then on the suspensions, Chair, I mean, I would not like to go into that detail, because obviously it's people, you know, and stuff like that. I mean, I think we're quite prepared maybe to provide some information in a written response. These cases are generally well investigated. It goes through all the necessary processes and stuff like that. So I'd rather like to deal with that almost in a kind of a closed session by providing the information that's required to the committee. Also, obviously, not putting any names and stuff to it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. We then proceed with the signing and performance agreements by SMS members on page 140, page 141 to 142. Let's stop there, because then we can start with 3.8 in the next round. Any questions? No. Okay. So employee performance, page 143, 144, 145. And then we get leave on 146. Let's go to health promotions, 311 on page 147. Any questions there? No. Okay, 147, health promotion programs. I think this is very laudable. I think particularly in the wake of COVID, departments do need to take cognizance of the health of their employees. That goes from page 147, 148, 149 to 150. We start with labor relations. Any questions there? Okay, from page 150, we have labor relations. I take cognizance of what you said, DG. But this is collective agreements, it's strike actions. Then we go on to skills development, training, injuries on duty, and consultants on 155. Any questions there? No. Okay, well, that takes us to the end of section D, which is the sections that we are reviewing today. I will open the floor for public input shortly. So if I remember, Bryant, anything there from you?
Thanks, Chairperson. I think, you know, overall, it's a very good reflection of what's been undertaken over the past period. But I just think one thing that's worth emphasizing, and I'd like to just maybe get a bit more information about this, is 152 fraud and corruption engagements were facilitated, and the target, I think, was 125, which means that's a huge overachievement in terms of investigations and engagements around fraud and corruption. And I just want to know whether this could be sustained going forward. It is such a challenge within all governments across the country, let's be frank. I think the difference is how we deal with it. And it seems as if the department is managing to achieve that. So I just want to find out, maybe from the DG and the Premier, if this is something that can be sustained going forward, and what the plans are to ensure that we keep that momentum going with fighting fraud and corruption.
Thank you very much. DG?
Chair, I mean, we take ethics quite seriously, not just in this department, but across the entire government. And we provide this kind of training in two areas. One is on Lucas's side through Sanet van Aarde, and we do that at our training institution out in Stellenbosch. And then the other one deals with Rootfin, that's on the forensic side. That's in addition to the ethics officers that are employed across government. And I mean, our ethics officers, Nozipo, she sits there next to Robert. I mean, she keeps us all on par. So in fact, she does all the issues relating to disclosures, remunerative work outside of the public service, and then obviously all disclosures around supply chain management and people involved in that system. So from a departmental perspective, I think we are fairly okay. I think in the province also, I think the number of cases is, I mean, we haven't seen a spike in any of this. I mean, even if you look at the overall sort of response from a governance perspective, I think we're doing quite well as a provincial government. But Ruthven, I just need to ask you whether you're going to be able to sustain these kind of levels of training.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you for the question. The training and awareness is one of the proactive measures to prevent fraud and corruption. Now, it is done in 3 different ways. One is face-to-face training and awareness sessions. The others are by means of Teams, and the third one is e-learning. Now, in this financial year, we actually increased the Teams sessions, which are a bit less time constraints for the resources, as well as the e-learning. Whether we can sustain it, there was a huge demand and we tried to meet it. We also go beyond Western Cape government. There was quite a substantial demand to train new SGB members of the schools who during the financial year. So that also had an impact on the numbers that and our teams went out on Saturdays to train SGB members. So those were over and above what we planned for in Western Cape government. We tried to manage the demand by combined sessions, and I think this year it's already looking better, that it's closer to the target. But still, we still want to sustain the impact. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, everybody. And thank you very much for helping us all get through the documentation. We now have a section where we have public input. I just want to ask, I think it's only some people upstairs. If people want to bring public input, please come downstairs and be near a mic so we can hear you. So, right, are there any hands? Do people want to? I've got one gentleman there, 2. Okay, let's start there. The gentleman in the white shirt. Thank you.
Hi, I'm going to read it, okay?
Can I just ask you to introduce yourself so we just have your name for the record?
I didn't hear that instruction,
Sorry. Yes.
Okay, my name is Fuad. Anything else you need from me?
No, I think proceed.
Fuad. Okay. My concern is about education. The respectful senior uncle over there, honorable, said that Brother Khalid posed the question concerning education. And what is the budget for education, he asked. And amongst the 3, education, health, and security, he said that perhaps education can help advance security and health. And I would like to emphasize on that point as well, as education have a greater influence on health and security. I mean, there is no health institution or security institution without any type of education or structure in it, infrastructure. And the mother that you have mentioned, when mothers and parents was interviewed concerning the welfare of their kids and what they are exposed to in the communities that they live in when they travel to school, whether it's by foot or by transport. Is that you said that the mother didn't recognize that the child suffers from post-trauma because of what he has been exposed to. And this, in fact, shows that there's a lack of education previously, and now again, we are going to advance in more, even greater lack of education moving forward. So I think education plays a very pivotal role, and it's a very clear and not so difficult to understand. It's a very simple statement that education plays a role in our development. And the brother over there also, sorry, I don't know the terms to use for one another. The respected guy over there said that, what about weather? As we all understand that this time weather has changed so much. And whether it's true or not, but the world is shifting, or it's somewhere in that in cosmologically, the world has been placed in a different place in the space. But besides that, returning back to a place where we can have a preparation so there can be minimal damages done when we do face this type of weather conditions. And again, it returns to education in the schools where people have to be educated, and who more ready to educate than the kid that goes to school for education. Whether he decided to take a gun to school or not, but as long as there is other kids in between as well, there is no place that's absent of light. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Premier, who will take this one?
Thank you. I'll start. Thank you for coming today. You know, often we have these budget processes or the annual reports, and one of the questions earlier was, you know, public engagement, and so often so few people do come. So I want to say to you, thank you so much for coming here, because it's really important that people engage with these kind of reports. I mean, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, as the DG was saying, you know, education now has the biggest budget in this government. At one stage it was health, and now it's education. But they always vie for the biggest share of the budget. But we also are always under pressure. I mean, we could have a lot more money. And right now, that's the big fight we're having at a national level with slow growth, to try and get a fair share to all the provinces for education, because it is critical. If you don't get education right, I mean, the rest of life doesn't really come right, and we've got to keep investing in it. And I absolutely agree with you. I mean, whether it's trauma and how we deal with trauma with our children, it's the best place to deal with it, because that's where they come together. And how do we improve in the programs? How do we make sure that the curriculum gets better, that the services are improved? And I mean, that's constant focus. Yeah, I mean, there's all these influencing factors, whether it's safety and crime, and the influencing factor that has on our ability to educate, on the system of education, on the society in which we live. And Dr. Ishmael sent something to me on crime, and I think you said in 1998, there was a crime survey that said the biggest issue are the stealing of bicycles in crime. Well, quite frankly, I mean, the change now, it's about gangsterism and murder and drugs and shootings. And I mean, it is really something that is, I mean, it's holding every single one of us back. That's why in this province 5 years ago, we started embarking on a thing called the safety plan. It's not a provincial, our job is oversight, not policing, and then how does it influence with our health department or our education department or the hele samelewing? It's all impacted. Crime impacts on every single one of us, just as climate change is now impacting every single one of us. And climate change, I mean, from a government point of view, it's about floods and fires and rising sea levels, but then it's also about hot days. We're going to have days that are hotter than ever before. We've now, in this last summer season, while we were in winter, getting snow in KwaZulu-Natal, which is a tropical region, shouldn't have snow. In the northern hemisphere, they're having the hottest days ever recorded. Now it's our turn for summer. Now, what does that mean for education? When you've got a day where your learners are at school, but it's 42 degrees or 45 degrees. Can you educate at that temperature? And these are the difficulties that we have to deal with. So I absolutely agree with you. I don't know if anybody else wants to add anything from.
Thank you very much. Then I've got the lady in the white suit.
Good morning, everybody. All protocol observed.
Can you just lean forward? We just can't hear you. Just get caught by the mic. Is also make sure there's little lights on, eh?
Okay. Is that a better? Okay, thank you. Greetings, Chair and everybody present. I am Utimna Angeni. I have a question with regards to the development of the youth, specifically with regards to entrepreneurship and focusing on the township areas. There's in the company that I recently started last year, which focuses a lot on helping people establish their businesses, legally do all of the necessary research involved in starting a company and ensuring that it is impactful and it works and the service and product eventually reaches the public. I've realized that specifically in these township areas and with people who have really amazing ideas, innovative ideas, they are really being hindered by a lack of knowledge and a lack of access to so many resources that could actually help them establish. So my question is there or are there any resources being allocated towards assisting in entrepreneurship and in assisting in equipping young people to having access to said resources, and what efforts are actually being made and how can they become more impactful, and who are you engaging with or relating with to gauge this information from? Is there any efforts that are being made towards getting actually a foot on the ground and actually teaching people and assisting them in that regard? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very good question.
Thank you very much, Chair. And again, I mean, like the previous question was about education, and this is the Department of the Premier, but we're supposed to know about everything that's going on in the government. And this is a question about economic development. And so I'll answer it to the best of my ability. I'm also going to give you a document. This is my one, but you can take it with you. This is called the Provincial Economic Review and Outlook, which is what our Minister of Finance, Deirdre Bartman, tabled 2 weeks ago. And it really looks at the aspects of our economy, where we're weak, where we're strong, what are some of the projects. It's not exactly what you're asking about, because that'll be an economic development report. But in DDAT itself, I think the first part of the answer to your question would be a program in DDAT, Department of Economic Development and Tourism, and Agriculture, because it stems both of those departments. They have a fund called the Booster Fund. I think it's about 78 million, if I remember correctly, about 78 million rand that's made available. And that's a booster fund for SMMEs, startup businesses. Primarily, we try to, and the lessons that we've learned over the years is it's very hard to just say someone's got an idea for a business, they've started a business, they ask for money, they need R1 million, but they don't even have the support or wherewithal to actually make sure that that R1 million is going to make the difference in their business. So the new model around the Booster Fund incorporates entrepreneurs that are majorly successful. So in the city, for example, I'm not sure exactly whereabouts you're from, but in Khayelitsha, there is an unbelievable entrepreneur called Luvu Irani. He's got the Sululu Foundation, the Sululu Computers is his business, but Sululu Foundation is his plowback entity. It's a trust that he set up. And in actual fact, that entity is where he brings entrepreneurs together, and we bring our funding together in that same space, because an entrepreneur would get money, but then you get other entrepreneurs who work with you to make sure your business is a success. In Mitchell's Plain, it is R Labs and Marlon Parker, and they do exactly the same thing. And we're trying to establish, and Cellular's just launched one now in Dunoon. So he's starting to set up these programs, and we come along so that those entrepreneurs that come along, we come along with the funding to try and help get success. And it seems to be a much higher success rate, because in entrepreneurship, I mean, globally, you have a 70 to 80% failure rate. We mustn't be scared of failing, because you've tried something, as long as you learn the lessons and then try it again. But, and it's difficult for government and budgets to fund it. But I think that's a very good program to link to. Of course, that department will also be here, so I'm not sure if you can make it to that meeting as well, because then you can get down to the nuts and bolts. I think removal of red tape is also a big issue. Those things that you come across that are in your way in trying to get a business going, we need to know about that. So we've got a red tape reduction or ease of doing business unit. They need to be told it's difficult to apply for this, or this form is crazy, it's like too many pages, or it's not easy. Those are the things that they need to know about, so we can start to make it easier to do business around regulation. And then maybe one other area is skills. And we have a thing called the Premier Skills Forum, which we mentioned earlier in the discussions. But that forum is where we bring together business, and whether it be our universities, our colleges, or even the schooling system. The first question, the schooling system, and how our schooling system is not necessarily perfectly aligned to the economy. And we have got a lot of work to do there. So that is much more, artisanal training and splitting off in a school system, apprenticeships linked to schooling. So I think that's also an area, but you could probably get quite a lot of answers if you actually manage to come to that other one. I'm not sure if you'll have the time for that, and hopefully I could give you some of those answers, and I'll give you this book when we're finished.
I just want to encourage the public. Obviously, with the APs, we'll be doing this for the whole of the month. And if you're interested in coming to specific ones like education or anything like that, please ask the procedural officer for a timetable so you can see when they're also being scheduled. Are there any other? Sorry, DGI, forgive me.
And thank you, Chair. Maybe just in relation to the Booster Fund, we've supported about 770 businesses. And more or less the same number of young people, that's entrepreneurs, and as Premier said, also through our skills fund. And through that, we could create, about 5,200 jobs. There is a specific focus in the Department of Economic Development on the township economy, and the recognition of the role that the township economy plays. It also means that, people can spend where they live. It means that they don't have to incur all the transport costs and stuff, but the department also helps these kind of new businesses to actually create a conducive environment. And it's not just, your normal spaza shops and stuff like that. The department also, through our skills forum, look at particular sectors, like from a technology perspective, our BPO enablers, and it's really targeted towards the youth. And as Premier has just said now, they're also working with the commercial banks. So it's not just giving money, it's also training young individuals, helping you with business plans and making sure that when you start your business, that you've got a good chance of success. So I'd really recommend that you attend that session of our Department of Economic Development. They are also responsible in terms of a growth plan for the skills development stuff that the Premier spoke to, that is linked to education. So that would probably be your best session to attend, so that they can explain to you exactly how it works and on whose door to go and knock at. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Right, any other questions? No, okay. Well, at this point, I really want to thank the Premier and the DG and the department, everybody for being here this morning. I know it's a bit warm, but thank you very much. And I think that that was some very valuable information. And also to the public, thank you very much for being here. I see that lunch will be served at 12 o'clock, to which the public can also come. If you are here, it is now 11:05. So I will now excuse the Premier and the department. Thank you very, very much, as well as the public. We're just going to remain with the committee here. Thank you, everybody.
Can I just also say to you and to the committee, thank you very much for the opportunity to put our annual report on the table. It is about oversight and what we've delivered in the last term. I also look forward to working with the committee into this term of office. And I also want to take the opportunity, if I may, just to say to DG and to the team, I really do appreciate, thank you very much for everything that you do every single day in the interests of our citizens. You know, sometimes there's this brand that government officials sort of come to work quite late and go home very early. In this government, you send an email at 11 o'clock at night, and then you have to reply afterwards to say, stop replying, you must reply tomorrow, not now. And I must say, thank you. It is recognized and it is appreciated. They really do go above and beyond in the service of our citizens. So I want to say publicly here, I want to thank them all very, very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. I think we'll take a break for sort of 5 minutes if anyone wants a comfort break, and then the committee will reconvene. Thank you, everybody. Okay, we're all here. We may as well then proceed. All right, so the deliberation of the committee report requirements. Is there anything anybody wants to raise that we haven't raised? Anything you would like to see expanded? Anything in writing? I know there were some questions about specific details. Anyone? No? Okay. Anything anybody wants to say at this particular point before we go on to the draft committee minutes? Yes, Member Bryant.
Yeah, it was raised, I think, at our first meeting. I only know because I was the one who raised it, but it was just with regards to those, I don't know what you refer to them as, those organizations that are funded.
Yes,
you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Yeah.
We can ask for that list?
Yeah. Okay. That's it. Just
Okay.
as a reminder.
Okay, we'll just ask for that then.
Yeah.
Anything else? Procedural officer, the procedure from here towards getting that report finalized and when we then schedule it.
we can, I'll send it to them a week before the 8th of November. I mean, our next meeting slot.
All right, so our next meeting slot is the 8th of November, where we'll be getting a briefing on legislation, but then we'll also get the report about a week before. If you can think of anything else you might want, may I say close of business today, send an email about what you would require. Okay. Then consideration of the draft committee meeting minutes of the 20th of September. Have we got that? Okay. Is there anything there anybody wants to raise? It is currently being flighted. It's a bit small, but I think we can manage. That was with the IEC. It was a very informative session with the IEC about what happened during the election. Can we adopt those draft minutes? Who would like to propose that?
Proposed, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Kalpalanda and Said.
Chair.
Thank you very much. Excellent. Right, resolutions and actions. Anything at this particular point? No. Okay.
Should maybe just inform them about the 3 bills that will be upcoming and we might have urgent.
Yes, there are the 3 bills that are coming up. The provincial one is obviously the seats bill. And then we've had 2 referred to us by the NCOP. We might run out of slots. We've only got 2 slots left, the 8th and I think it's the 22nd or the 23rd. Let's see what happens on the 8th. And then potentially we might have to ask for another couple of slots. We haven't yet received any kind of direction from the NCOP. We're still waiting to see what will happen there with that briefing. But certainly with the seats bill, we can then have a look at that and proceed forward. And that is it. Thank you, everybody. And thank you very, very much for moving us through it. I mean, this is one of those things that could have taken forever. I think a couple of other departments have real monsters coming up. So thank you very much, and I'm sure we'll all see each other the next couple of weeks doing this all over again. And people are going to be at Scopa this afternoon. We'll see you then. Thank you, everyone.